All right. So let's start. In 2007, my family moved to Edmonton, and I specifically asked my parents if I could stay behind and finish my undergrad in the Philippines. And my parents, who are here, actually knows the struggle of convincing me to move to Edmonton and to just leave everything behind, the community that I built, the network that I have, and me being a youth counselor in the Philippines. It was really hard for me to make those changes. If there's one person that you can blame for getting me into CrossFit, it's Marissa. Marissa's the first person who told me, like, oh, do you know what you're doing at the gym? I'm like, no, I don't. I was like, why don't you do CrossFit? The worst thing is she doesn't even do CrossFit. So I think she wanted to set me up so I could talk about it and laugh at me when I start doing so. Yet here we are. This is a picture of me at immigration. No one told me you're not allowed to bring knives on the plane. I'm just kidding. That night, I contemplated and asked myself, what's going to happen to you? You lived in the Philippines, you're going across the world, what's going to happen? It's the same thing as when I first joined CrossFit. This is my first day at CrossFit. I didn't know what the shit these are. I'm like, what am I going to do here? I was so insecure. I felt like, what if I break my back? You know, what if something bad happens to me? I wasn't sure what I was really signing up for. Talking about signing up for, no one told me, thanks to my parents, didn't tell me how bad it gets cold in Edmonton. Moving from 40 degrees to minus 40 wasn't really fun for me. But I think it's one of those. You do something, and you're not always going to have the rainbows and butterflies or warmth for that matter, but you kind of have to embrace it. Same thing with CrossFit. No one told me you're going to die. I mean, I've seen those photos, and it was like, yeah, you know, maybe it's just like very dramatic. But then I realized, like, until you're actually doing the workout, putting yourself out there, that's when you feel like, yes, I'm actually going to die, but you know what? I'm going to do it again because I'm passionate about it. So then you embrace it, right? Like, I try to find ways on how I can embrace the cold, and so I decided to join and volunteer for Deep Freeze Festival, which really gave me a different twist to my cold story about Edmonton. It really provided me that sense of that I could make the best of Edmonton. The same thing with CrossFit. You know, like you can push your friends in those sled pushes, and even though it's really hard, it really makes sense for you to find the good in everything that you sign up for. This is not obviously how we always do at CrossFit, but you try to find those things that could make it worthwhile for you. Folkfest. And for people who have been to Folkfest, this is really what got to me. I talked a lot about it, and people from the Philippines were like, what the fuck is Folkfest? We didn't have Folkfest in the Philippines. So for me, seeing people, you know, being on top of the hill and looking at people, talking to strangers, it was a sense of community for me that I thought I can belong here. Same thing with CrossFit. This is a picture with my friend Kendall, who I go to CrossFit with. This is a wedding for my friend Camille and Fraser. And 80% of the attendees were lawyers, because both their parents are lawyers. And all we did was to ask them to do push-ups for the couple to kiss. So we made sure they were drunk enough to not roll their eyes. With Next Gen, this is my catalytic event. This is that moment where I find that this is my community. This is my first ever event with Next Gen, and I was able to share this with Ashley. Ashley's actually in the crowd, and this is our first photo. We didn't know each other, but then you get to have that community feel to it. I never thought that I would be competing at CrossFit either. It was one of those moments where you join, and because there's that sense of community around you, they've seen you, and they know how hard you do, that they support you to compete. And this is my first ever competition. Fast forward 2016, I actually led the event that just a year ago I was a stranger to, which is the Next Gen Month. I didn't know that being an immigrant in Canada, or in Edmonton specifically, would give you that opportunity to create a platform where you can share your stories to people and that they can embrace it too. They say, how can he jump that high? Like, that's almost half his torso. It actually is. But I did it 50 more times because for me, it's when you have to commit to something that you really love that you're going to push yourself, no matter how high it is, and you just have to take the leap. Speaking of taking the leap, this is the poster of our Next Gen vlog series that is now in its 5th episode. And it's something that, again, I've never imagined 7 years ago when I moved to Canada that I would ever do in a city that I wasn't even born. So for me, it wasn't a prerequisite whether you're born and raised in Edmonton or not. It's do you have the heart to create that opportunity for them? Same thing with CrossFit. When I first started, I couldn't even squat a 45-pound barbell. This is 245 pounds, which is 125 pounds more than my body weight. That's a progress that I believe that I was able to do because I had that sense of community who supported me along the way. And that community actually extended to the Philippines. This is where I was born and raised, a city called Makati in the Philippines. And when I visited, they did not waste a single minute to say #YEG. Because they're like, why do you talk about this so much? Every single post has an #YEG. But that's when I knew I was winning, because they noticed. And even though my commitment to CrossFit is that high, I still go to Commonwealth Rec Center. And even there, I do the cardinal rule number 2 at CrossFit, which is wear the t-shirt. So then people ask about it. I'm like, oh, tell me about CrossFit. I'm like, sure, how much time do you have? So at the end of the day, what I realize is that that sense of community helps you build your story. And this is my CrossFit family, and they're the ones who've seen me struggle day in, day out, and pushes me to my limits, and really make me realize that I'm not in this alone. Last slide would be Edmonton, and this is a photo from my phone, that's why it's pretty blurry, but I just want to challenge everyone that when someone asks you to talk about yourself, what do you talk about? CrossFit, have I not taught you anything? Talk about Edmonton. I challenge you to help create that story because it doesn't matter where you were born and raised, Edmonton is home for everyone.